If you want to go through and maybe share with us when you got the ideas that you wanted to express here and when you decided that they had to be films instead of, say, some other cheaper, less arduous form of expression. Anyone, fire off.
Yeah, I'll start. So this script, I initially wrote it in 2019, and I was like, yeah, 2020 is going to be the year to film it. I'm ready. Like, we're going to have a great time on set. Bam, a pandemic happened. Then 2021 came, and I was like, I don't want to be like 6 feet away from my crew, my cast. Like, I'm very big into like building community on a set and having a good time, because set life is very arduous and it's long hours. 2022, I'm hustling. 23, I'm like, all right, this is it. And I just started placing all the pieces together, and here we are. Divine timing is significant in the making of the movie and the message of the movie. I'm happy to premiere it here. This is the first screening, so very exciting. WBUR CitySpace, I'm just like the messages of like the need for community, the real pandemic of loneliness is real and realer. At this time, and finding your voice when there's too many voices going on, and connection with people is messages and script rewrites from all of these years. No longer a traveling ghost for this character.
Similar timeline in terms of starting, but we actually shot this. This is a COVID film, and we shot this in late 2020. We started talking about the film in late 2019. John Lamb, the dancer, and Daniel Jacobs, the cinematographer, who's here, we've worked together a lot, but this is the first time we worked with Helen Pickett, the choreographer. And everything got stopped when the pandemic hit, and then we decided that we were going to try to make this film later that year. And so all the prep was done on Zoom. We finally got, Helen traveled up from Pittsburgh, where she was living, and we got to this warehouse and shot for 2.5 days. Well, 2 days initially, went back after the first cut and shot the stuff at the beach. But this was all done, we got there with masks. We were in COVID protocol, and then by the end of the second day, we were not wearing masks and felt comfortable with the small group we had. We had a very small crew here. I mean, it was, I think 5 of us total that were on set. So part of what made this possible during those months was that it wasn't a huge production. It was a very contained group.
Hi, I'm Sean Temple. This is Sarah Wisner. We did the Thaw. Apparently, a lot of people were trying to make their movies before COVID happened. Same thing happened with us. We wrote this film. Sarah wrote this film in like the summer of 2019. We were at a festival with another movie, and we met this amazing actress, and we had this idea for this movie, and we wanted to make it with her, and we pitched it to her, and she's like, send me the script. So we had to go write it. Do you want to take over though?
Yeah, we always conceived of it as a film. We had made a few short films prior to this, and we were kind of ready for something a little bit more ambitious than what we had been doing. And we also wanted to go back to Vermont to film. We're both from Vermont, and we had been shooting our movies there, but living elsewhere. And we just wanted to kind of get back to our roots and get back to like a Vermont story, a Vermont legend. We were preparing in 2019, did a whole crowdfunding campaign, all of that, scheduled to shoot in March.
Yeah, we were 3 days away from filming when the world shut down.
So we shot it, in fact, 2 years ago in 2023. So we had a bit of a hiatus. And it's now kind of almost exactly 2 years ago that we were shooting. And we've had kind of our full festival run. So we're kind of at the opposite end of Maria. We're at the end of our run here.
The thing that really kept us going, because there was periods where we kind of didn't know if we'd ever get to actually make this movie, was our collaborators back from 2020 were all so committed to the story and just like they were the ones being, when are we gonna make it? When are we gonna make it? When are we gonna make it? So we like really wanted to make it for them, and obviously our students are contributors.
Okay, well, I have to say that for our film, I'm Brittany Severance, that we did not try to shoot it that early. We conceived of our idea in 2022. And I was actually between two different projects thinking about, we were working on the script for Periphery. I was also working on another script with someone else. And then we decided we wanted to take more time with the story. And so we workshopped it, worked on it a bunch in 2022. And then like a lot of other people shot in 2023 and finished it last summer for like the editing process. So it was meant to be a script, and we just took a year to kind of work on that and perfect that before we decided to shoot it, and a little bit about what inspired it.
I'm Herman Servatius. We co-directed, co-wrote, co-produced all that jazz for Periphery. But I would add to that is that I think we were really happy to come up with something that we actually dared to take longer on, because originally, I don't know if you remember, but the idea was we had some free time, whatever that means, in the summer between teaching courses at Worcester State University. And we were like, oh, let's get together and we'll shoot something really short, right? Just because we don't want to bite off more than we can chew. And then we wrote this together, and at some point during the writing process, we said, we can't do this in one summer. We have to take the time to hash this out, get everything set up perfectly. And so we actually took the extra year to finish writing it properly and get the crew that we wanted. And we got really lucky with a lot of great actresses and actors that we fell in love with right in the beginning of the casting process. So that extra time, like allowing ourselves the courage to say, actually, let's not do this, really rushed, sort of art project. It turned from that into a true script, a true narrative, which I think I'm very proud of us for actually making that leap. And I think that's a good tidbit to end on there.
I'll quickly just say that we originally were like, oh, we're just gonna do this like quick, short 2 to 3 minute camera test type of fun project to just kind of play around with the camera, and yeah, it evolved into what Periphery is today.
So all these films are on location in New England area. Now, logistically, this is a challenge. Especially you guys all use the sun. Now, I don't know if you folks notice, but like people don't go outside when they make movies anymore. We were joking backstage that, like I haven't seen the sunlight in a Marvel movie since like Iron Man 2. Like everything's in a warehouse in Atlanta. So if you want to go through and tell us where you shot the movies and what were the challenges of using your locations. And someone from the audience asked, is the community supportive of you shooting in New England?
I can start. I was trying to find like very particular places that this character travels, and so there's a lot of locations. That's my apartment, everyone. And a really wonderful bar. Like shout out to the Fourth Wall restaurant bar. That were like, we love movies, like come through. And I was like, how much? And they were like, it's free, like come through. We support filmmakers, and so that was really wonderful. And then the hard part comes with the clouds and the sun and all of that. And my cinematographer, Abhijit, is here all the way from Atlanta. And so like knows how finicky it was to film and have that consistency. We shot on location in Hull, Massachusetts. And we had like a wonderful community there that we like were so nice, and we're happy to see us out there making our work. When the guys were fighting, it was very interesting because like there were cars that like stopped by and were like trying to like check out what's going on in that fight. Like, should we intervene? And the ocean's another element that. It's so cool too. Yes, and our actress is here too, all the way from New York. And so that was a freezing day as well, to jump into the water and still have all of that reality. But I think that the sun hit in the right times, the wind came in the right times, and like I mentioned before, like everything just kind of like, it was there when it was supposed to. And Even in like moments of like when a character is like realizing something or something deep happens, then the sun comes out and I'm like, there it is. And we like that. We like that.
I don't know if I should be really proud of myself or ashamed that I recognized the fourth wall instantly.
Great bar.
We shot our entire film in and around Kilburn Mills, which is in New Bedford. And John, the dancer, and his husband owned the building. And they were developing it. Different floors had different shops, but the fourth floor was vacant, had not been developed yet. And so that's where we went to shoot. And we got there and was like, yeah, it's pretty cool. And then the sun came down a little bit in the sky. We're like, oh no, this is amazing. So, our biggest challenge, we had to get there, which was not that far, an hour and a half or so. But we had limited time during the day where the sun was going to cooperate and be in those, coming through the windows in the way that it was. So, so some of it was just, it actually helped because we could sleep in. We didn't have to, it wasn't like a super early shoot. Get there at noon or 11, shoot until 6. But it's a warehouse, so some of the other challenges were like the floor and all this. Some of the spaces just wasn't. John's really dancing here. Like this is like a serious dance performance, and so we had to be mindful of just the safety. That there were some areas where just the floor wasn't safe enough for him to dance. So that helped us in terms of choosing locations, for sure. And then the outdoor stuff, which we shot a few weeks later. In that area, like there are a lot of houses and like some boats. And so for us, we're like, can we find the kind of angle here where we're not going to see all that stuff? That wasn't going to be part of the movie. So you see a couple buoys in the background, but we really tried to minimize the what we saw off in the distance in the water. So.
Yeah, it's almost hard to know where to start with this question.
I can imagine.
We shot in Stowe, in Vermont. The house is a family home of this wonderful couple that kind of handcrafted this structure out of 3 different historic buildings, because the husband that's like his career and his hobby is to work on historic construction. So he's in the process of creating this space. You see parts of it, and there are parts of it that's the work is ongoing. It's like his life's work is this amazing house, with all of these amazing period details that were really to our advantage. We were very grateful for their support to speak to the community element of it. That in Vermont, when you're filming, there's not a whole lot of like infrastructure resources, but the community is wonderful. People are, there's a very high concentration of artists and people who are interested in the art. When we were originally going to shoot in 2020, we had lined up a whole bunch of like private homes of folks who were just willing to host cast and crew who are traveling. Obviously, we weren't ultimately able to take advantage of that generosity, but that hospitality, that welcoming spirit really makes filmmaking there possible in the absence of those other kind of structured resources.
Sarah and Scott also spent like a month and a half every weekend basically production designing the house. So they let us completely like change their house for like almost 2 months. We were like, we need a spot where they're going to be chopping wood. And then the next time we came back, he had it all set up for us.
Here's the wood pile.
He built the shelves and the root cellar. He was just amazing. Couldn't have made the movie without their support. And I think, obviously, you watch the movie and you can probably guess what the hard parts were. It was the snow and the weather. That was always the point. It's a winter movie. We wanted snow. So a big part of the reason we kept having to delay is we couldn't film in a 2-month window. We had to wait a year. So that was always part of the problem. The other big problem is that Stowe was right next to Ski Mountain. They get so much snow. When Sarah was working on PDing the house, I was shoveling out the whole backyard, creating that like space that all of that was there. Every week we'd get like another foot. I'd go and reshovel it. And then the day before shooting, we got another 1.5 feet. So I had to shovel it all again. I was buff.
Don't you have production assistants for that? It's like, did you find college film students?
Yeah, and I like shoveled it all out, and it was like the straight up and down thing, and the DP showed up, and they're like, "No,
do it again.
You need to fix that." So then I
do
had
it better, Sean.
Leave it all out. But yeah, I mean, we were shot in mid-March, so it was like, are we gonna have snow? Are we not gonna have snow? there's spring and fall was the idea in the movie, so it was always like that felt like the right time to like have maybe some snow, maybe not, but there was always a chance there would have been no snow, and I'm not quite sure what we would have done.
Yeah.
But it worked out. We'd got great weather.
It did ultimately work out, despite the fact that the actor laying on the ground was doing
So
that in
cold.
like 12 degrees for 45 minutes. Sorry,
And
Jeff.
we made them be in like nightgowns, so
Yeah. But to finish the question, there are like 36 VFX shots in the film that the majority of them are kind of tweaking things like weather elements, like snow or adding icicles stripping, or there's one very VFX heavy shot that we had to do night for day.
when she comes
No, day
out
for night.
and her mom is in the box,
It's supposed to be bright, sunny.
we ran out of light.
We ran out of daylight, and so that was actually shot at night.
And then we took a different shot and VFX'd it on the windows to give it reflection. Yeah.
So yeah.
Which is something we did with the Abhijit in a different movie, so we knew it worked.
Yep. So when the weather doesn't cooperate, there are other recourses to take.
Okay. So we ran into a lot of different things. The benefit was that the location was about 1.5 miles away from my house. So I could walk there whenever I wanted for location scouting, finding out the right time of day. My poor actors and crew were there at 6 a.m. every morning because to get the light the way we wanted it, to get that beautiful backlight, we had to start filming between 6:30 and 9:30 in the morning, because after that, it was pretty much gone. So a lot of the film was very early, unlike some other folks who got to sleep in. We were like up at the crack of dawn, before dawn, getting ready and getting there. And of course, in June when you're filming, you're gonna get a lot of dew on the ground, and we had to worry about that. But another big thing was, it was when we had that weather where every weekend it decided it wanted to rain. So our first day, it started raining in the middle of a take, and we had to just rush everything into the cars, and thankfully
Throw blankets on everything, yeah.
yeah, we were able to salvage it and drive to our location where we had our merry-go-round dream sequence and got that done, thankfully. But like the first day was almost completely reshot because of the interruption of filming. But we also had a lot of support from the community in terms of they were cool with me just shooting there. They knew me because I had literally been walking there for years on my routine neighborhood walks, so everyone was cool. I don't know if you wanted to add to that in terms of like challenges or things that
Well, you
worked
forgot
out.
the most important weather element of all, which was baseball games. Because it's right next to a baseball field, and they did not want to share their I don't know why. It's nothing against anybody, but they did not want to
They
share
play
the schedule.
baseball at 6 o'clock in the morning.
All weird times of day, Little League. So we had to work around that, and actually it worked out fine. We didn't run into too many problems with sound too much, a few small things here and there, but it was just the nerve-wracking not knowing when they would be there, how many people would run through or anything like that, or whether the space would be messed up from the way we left it the night before or anything like that. So Aubrey, one of our assistants, always was taking pictures of everything to make sure she could put it exactly the way it was before. So that location-wise, that was another challenge. In a lot of my work, I try to, pay tribute to places that have been important to me in the past. And of course, this piece is very much that same theme of revisiting the past and thinking about memories and, the value we assign to them. And this is actually the first, coincidentally, one of the first things I've shot where I don't do that. So Boylston was where we shot that one, near where Brittany lived. And then the other scene, do you remember where that orchard was? Oh, for the dream
Brookfield
sequence?
Orchard, but-
Brookfield Orchards, yeah. So yeah, both of those are not in Worcester, where I'm from. So although technically it is an international collaboration, because the photograph you see is shot in Graz, Austria, where my family lives. So that's actually in my backyard, so where I grew up. So it's
The
my
magic
nephew's.
of the movies, folks.
Absolutely, it counts. So yeah, technically a little bit of a third location there. And then last thing I'll say, just to move on to the next question, but it's interesting because we always sort of planned on shooting the dream sequence at a different spot, because there was actually originally a merry-go-round in that park when we started planning it. And then right before, I don't know, it was like a month or two before, or
Yeah.
like fairly close to shooting, they just removed it. And we're like, well, okay, that's not there anymore. And we were never planning on using it because it didn't actually, it was way too loud. It was old and rusty and if you turned it, it would have made a ton of noise and not looked cool at all. So we were never really going to use it, but then we had to sort of adjust the script a little bit. And it actually validated our plan to go to Brookfield Orchards and shoot at that location because he said, well, now we sort of have to anyway, right? So it was nice that we didn't have to deal with that. Like we weren't relying on that merry-go-round, which is cool.
Yeah, we added that in of like, well, there used to be one there, right? And because there was, and that kind of determined some cinematography things. But the other thing I was gonna say, for me, that piece was really personal in terms of location. Not just because it was like close to where I was currently living for a while, but it reminded me of a playground that I used to go to all the time when I was a kid that had a merry-go-round, had the swings, had the old style jungle gym, and I just don't see them much anymore. So it was sort of an ode to that. And then a month later, they actually started changing that playground. So timing was of the essence because it's not the same.
It is funny because like when we were location scouting, we looked at a lot of playgrounds, even though we knew we probably were shooting at that one. But just to do our due diligence, we did that. And it's funny how many different ways people will call a merry-go-round. You know, some people are like, oh, is that what that's called? Oh, I don't know. So like the amount of, I thought it would be easy to ask people, oh, where are places with merry-go-rounds? And but they didn't always know what we were talking about, which is kind of funny. And then last thing is the idea that because you asked about the sun and shooting with the sun, and my older brother's a meteorologist of sorts, and so, but he lives in Thailand, so I kept calling him, and he'd be like, he's like the irony of him looking at the weather patterns in Worcester, Massachusetts, or Worcester County near Boylston to figure out for me, you know, is it going to rain? Is it not? Is it going to pass over? And he was pretty accurate, which is really amazing. But that was funny. And then my younger brother, who's also a filmmaker, contacted us multiple times just saying, you know, oh, well, you're going to get a lot of haze from the forest fires in Canada that are happening. And so if you use these lenses with these mounts and so forth and these filters, you'll block that out or accentuate it if you want to do that. So you might have even noticed that in some of the shots, which is pretty cool. So again, a lot of details. And now we of course joke that our next 5 or 10 projects together have to be done inside because we're not doing outside for a while. So.
So my mother always told me that we shouldn't talk about money, but this is an expensive art form, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to. But there's no real way to make money off a short film, is there? So
It's a great way to lose money.
So what exactly is the economic model here we're working with?
For Phantasma, my first film, Hyphen, I crowdfunded it, and people were like, you know, the more authentic I was about like the stories that I write and make, and also existing as a Latina filmmaker is, you know, it's something that people want to like see more of and want to support in any way they can until they're like ready. And so after the success of that, I was like, I'm up for crowdfunding again, because, you know, something that like made me like realize was that, you know, once you get people going into your film and making it into a movement, making it into like support the arts, support indie filmmaking with less than a expensive like movie ticket, you know, anything counts. It literally like anything counts for us. You know, like a $12 is like someone's meal on a film set. And so I crowdfunded again, and I also did like pretty good there as well, and applied to grants. I got one of the mayor's office, arts and council here in Boston, and I applied that to be able to create the work that I do, and some other grants from like teaching as a professor, and the Collective Futures Fund, which is funded by the Andy Warhol Foundation. So like giving people like an idea, like, okay, like this is what I'm working on, this is my idea, and I need that like extra funding in order to do this, to do that. And I also have to travel, like if I'm applying to film festivals, because I don't want this film to exist in my hard drive, or on my computer or on YouTube. Like I need to like talk to people and have communication with the audience, and that's how we build community. So like community is like really important and essential for this type of work, and money's important, but I think, I don't know, there's something much more valid in the community that it ultimately forms.
My formula is to spend as little money as possible. And so I'm fortunate. Well, so that means we have a tiny crew, right? So there are 5 of us. And so I'm working with people who are creative partners in this process, that they're creatively invested in the work as well. Helen, the choreographer, John, the dancer, and Daniel Jacobs, the camera person. And so there were really no one got paid. I mean, the colorist got paid a little bit of money, right? So that was the only person who got paid on the film. But making sure that we're creating an environment where the folks who are lending their time to this piece are getting something out of it creatively. And that freedom for us of not having a huge crew or a big budget means that we can do whatever we really want. I mean, if the film totally failed and sucked, it wouldn't have been like we wasted $10,000 or $20,000 of other people's money. So that's really been my goal when I'm making these dance films, these short dance films, is to just eliminate the expenses as much as possible. That again, privilege there, because John's family had invested in this warehouse, and Daniel Jacobs had invested in a camera, and so there are these tools that we had access to that allowed us to make the film. But in terms of just the spending on the actual film, very little. Spent a lot more on film festival entries than we paid for lunch. I don't know. And even when we show up on the set, Daniel's a professional, so he brings like a car full of gear. I'm like, leave it all in there. Just bring the camera, tripod, an Apple box to sit on. We're good. So how do we? It's just to make it more enjoyable for everybody. I think that I've worked as a cinematographer. I've worked on much bigger projects, and that's enjoyable and fun and necessary for certain films. But with a film like this, the idea was, how can we do this with as little of a footprint as possible on people's time and on the expenses that are needed? And so that was part of the game for me and for the crew.
We took the opposite approach on this one. I love that though. But with this one, we knew with the scope of what we were attempting and the location and the weather and everything, we were asking a lot of people. And so on this one, we tried as much as possible to pay everyone at least day rates and as much as we could. We did raise $20,000 crowdfunding. It cost more than that. I'm just being real.
You don't need to tell us.
I'm not going to tell you the number, but we were really committed to paying people on this one.
Yeah, we really, filmmaking, where the money really comes from is like how much time you get to film. We knew, like, we made this movie for so much, even though we spent a lot of money, it was so much less than you would like make the feature version of this movie if you do the equivalents, like a 20th. So we had to shoot the movie really, really quickly. And this movie's like 39 scenes. We do a lot of little tiny scenes that build up. And I just want to shout out our AD, Miriam Olkin, who also is the AD of Phantasma. And they did such an amazing job making this movie possible, because it was really complicated. Yeah.
In terms of funding, this project was funded between both of us, and a lot of our crew, even though we gave them something, and obviously meals, the traditional things you would do, a lot of them were in it for the experience. Our sets are a little bit different, where I treat my sets as and you've kind of been doing this too, as a learning tool. So a lot of times we work with both professionals that are our peers, but also take on students, so that they get the experience of being on set and feeling comfortable in learning, and that it's an atmosphere that's not going to chastise them if they wrangle cables the wrong way or do something. Like, it's collaborative in that way, and so we get a lot of enthusiasm, which is great working on set. But I would say we tried to keep it to a minimum. I mean, we were working in a public space, so in terms of that, there wasn't like a lot of cost. It was mostly just like costumes, people's time. Like, we paid the actors day rates. And I would say our composer was probably the most expensive, that and working with the
Worth it.
sound, because we had some wind and some other things we were trying to work through. And now festival fees and just traveling, like Maria said and Sean said, like it's all these things add up and you don't realize it. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, that was a lot more than I originally intended on spending. And I will say now I've been doing a lot of grant writing. And for an upcoming project, I do have a MCC Worcester Arts Council grant, which is going to be helping fund paying the crew day rates as well as the cast day rates for like a couple day project I'm working on, which you're helping me co-produce on that one. So I don't know if you want to add to anything.
Only thing I'll add is the trick is to co-produce. So it splits the cost right down the middle, which is great. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have made that by myself. And then, yeah, same sentiments. We run, both of us, one of the reasons we work so well together is we run similar kind of sets, you know, that combination of people who are professionals in the field, maybe have a lot of experience, then you have the people who are recent grads, maybe been doing it for a year or two, and then the people who maybe are still students. And that mix is actually seems, I really like that mix. It seems like we both do. And it really adds to that. It's not just for the money aspect of it. It's also because of that atmosphere of, you know, allowing people to get experience in and, you know, pick the pockets or whatever you want to call it, you know, take a leaf out of the book of other people who have been working in the industry for a while, which is good.
And to have fun, right? I mean, that's part of the process.
No, we only do serious stuff here.
So we have a question from the audience. They want to know if you go in prepared with a full detailed shot list or do you need to improvise? I imagine you can't afford to improvise unless you have to, right? Was there a situation in which you got caught? And
Yeah, you have the vision after you write the script, and then you have to sit down with your cinematographer and your assistant director and be like, okay, from what I wrote, what can we do? And please be real with me. It's about like realizing a lot of your vision and being realistic of like how many hours do we have here or here, and what's the weather, what's the resources, there's so many like other things happening past that shot list and the schedule that's like taking into consideration like who we have and where are we and what's available for us. So some improvisation in that sense of what the space gives us and what the weather gives us. So, for example, there was in the first couple of shots of the fight scene, it was supposed to be like a car coming and beeping at them to get off the street. And then Miriam, my assistant director, was like, no. And I was like, okay, we're going to go back and rewrite that. And now it's going to be a comedic effect of our assistant producer Aaron coming in, bumping in, and being an awkward person, and then it's a trio fight. So I like that ultimately better because it ended up adding some humor more than what I had envisioned.
Not sure this question is for me, but I'll say the dance in this film was completely choreographed. And what was important to the choreographer, and became important to all of us, was the integrity of that choreography. So there was no dance improvisation at all. In terms of the camera, we would do kind of, in cinematography, some kind of light planning, but I think the fun for me and Daniel is finding the opportunities that present themselves that we couldn't plan for. So especially when you're working with the sun and things that you have less control over. So I would say a lot of improvisation when it comes to the cinematography and shot selection. But in this case, the dance was fully choreographed. And so that gave us the kind of spine and structure for the piece.
For us, when we originally kind of envisioned this movie, we wanted to make it a lot looser, a lot more like following characters around, handheld, and more improv. But we quickly realized it was just not going to be at all possible to make a schedule in that context and try to find things on set. So we ended up going with a very, very specific shot list, and we have this big long shot Bible. If you look at it, it's basically the movie. But there's always moments of improv of something didn't work the way we wanted to, and we had to find something quickly within that context. But for the most part, it was very, very shotless. And do you have anything?
How many pages was your shot Bible?
hundreds. And also, like, we had to shoot 10 scenes a day. Like,
We planned the heck out of it.
and also,
Sorry, Miriam.
one thing I've been talking about a lot when it comes to this movie is every day we probably had a scene or two we were willing to cut, and multiple shots we were willing to cut if we could tell we weren't going to be able to make our day. So that was something we did ahead of time so that we didn't have to make a stressful decision in the moment. And we ended up cutting basically all those moments. And it wasn't hard because we had kind of made that decision earlier in the process. I think it's a good idea. And I tell everyone to do it.
Ours was actually very planned. I mean, there was a little bit of improv, maybe with slightly changing an angle or something if it wasn't working out, but we actually did camera tests because it was a mile down the street. We're just like, let's go bring the camera today and do some tests and see what's happening with the light, see what's happening with this angle. So we sat down and kind of very thoughtfully planned it, and we still ended up cutting a few shots. Right, yeah.
Well, that pretty much covers it for us. I think those were really validating, seeing those shots, when we went there and we did, especially the circle sequence where they're walking in a circle. And again, when you're on a low budget, you're like, oh, can we actually do that and not take up a ton of time with crew and cast and so forth? So we actually we have a version of that, which is just us going in a circle. And it actually, not to toot our own horns, but it's like, it looks really good. So we're like, oh, okay, that's actually feasible now. And again, location was key there because we were able to just walk right down the street. I live in Worcester, so 15-minute drive. So yeah, definitely key. And as you pointed out, we actually followed our shot list pretty much to the T. We really didn't cut anything crazy. I mean, we cut a scene, but that was in the editing process. We still filmed that scene that we cut. So, yeah.
All right, so there's some young and aspiring filmmakers out here. I want you to tell them one thing you wished you knew before you started making the movie.
I wish I knew the pandemic was going to happen. I think for me, I would say that I think wanting to know, like, as always, like, you have this vision, you have the schedule, you have the shot list, everything is prepared. And I think something that's important for folks to, like, think about, especially like newer filmmakers, is wiggle room, because anything can happen. And if you don't like cushion your schedule with like just some extra time, or even for like people to like just kind of like hang back and just kind of like relax a little bit, like just like having like an extra like time is always great. And it's something that like, like it's like something that I like, even like still to this time, like kind of struggle with, but like when you are like thinking like forward, like, trying to think about like, what if this happens, like preparing like ahead, it's just gonna help a lot and prepare you for those like moments where like you've fallen off of like schedule or things have gotten super tight. And so just kind of always preparing for the worst, but hoping for the best, and remembering to like have fun and enjoy the process, and and feel free to like rely on this like community crew, little like film family that you're like working with, because they've got your back as long as you're always communicating.
I have two things, one very specific and then one a little bit more broad. So what I discovered in editing this was how difficult it was to, and it sounds like it'd be simple, but to time the match cuts with the music and the choreography, because he's dancing to the music, but just a little off, right? Performance, and you jump, or you do an arabesque or something, whatever. And so it was actually really, the moments where he ran off screen, I'm like, oh, thank God. That's like the moments where I kind of reset, but it was really, and so sometimes we were like, oh, the shot's great, but I cannot use it because I cannot cut it in between the other two shots. So that was like a real kind of, that was a challenge here, like trying to get it to all line up and then satisfy all of the collaborators, because that dance, that move isn't as great, or I would have preferred. And so we were really kind of had to make a lot of compromises around that. The other, what was the second thing I was going to say? It also had to do with the editing. Sorry? I know it's broader. Come back to me. It was something brilliant, but I forgot about it. So.
You don't got anything? I'm going to say something I knew before I made the movie and did it anyways. I would definitely, especially when you're starting, highly, highly suggest not, like, making shorter movies. I think everyone, when they're making movies at our level, we're making movies with not enough resources, and your resources are going to go so much further if you make a shorter movie and really concentrate on, like, the essence of that. And when that happens, you have to also come up with a story that works as a shorter story. I'd also say don't make a feature-length story in a short, which is what we did. Don't make our movie. That's what I would say. Sorry.
I'm glad you made your movie.
I am
Thank
too.
you.
I'm kind of stumped on this one only because I feel like sometimes it's something you couldn't control. Like for us, it's like, well, I wish I knew better about the weather, but we were really looking at it obsessive compulsively. I don't think we could have done much because we also had rain dates built in and we had to use those rain dates. So
Oh, you were calling Thailand. You covered your base.
yeah. But I would say building in, like Maria was saying with Wiggle Room, I think just building in at least one like alternate day in case you are filming and there's weather issues or something comes up, you have that scheduled so that you can use it, because we had to use it. Like it poured the second weekend on the Saturday that we were going to film. That was the one day that I knew that there were no baseball games because we got in touch with the team and they were like, well, we have them on these dates, but I'm like, but what time? And they were like, oh, we're not gonna give you that. And I'm like, okay. So it's guesswork. So I'd say that is just, you know, if you can have that extra time, build in that extra time.
Mine's more conceptual, so similar to yours. It's not from this film specifically. This is something I learned like a decade ago now, but it was reaffirmed when we were both in graduate school, taking a place called Space, Place, Image, and Sound at Emerson College with Paul Toronto. He's an amazing professor. But he reaffirmed this, which was the idea that when you're making a film, especially if you're the person, right? You're the director or whatnot, the producer. When you're making a film, the idea that it's actually a blessing that other people are going to start taking parts of it and doing it themselves. It's actually a good thing. So when you're a younger filmmaker, it's really easy and understandable to fall into that trap of like, oh, I want it to be exactly how I thought it was going to be. But actually letting yourself take a step back and saying, actually, I want my sound person to take the sound. That's their job now. And they're going to do it well, and they're going to add their element to it, and that's going to make it better than what I could have probably envisioned anyway. Same with your cinematographer or any other role. They're all equally important, right? So, and again, that class, that was already something I'd learned years ago on other sets, and then that class really reaffirmed that with just the dichotomy of that, I guess.
Yeah, you're going to come up with better ideas together than you ever will alone. Absolutely. In every different step of the film, yeah.
I remembered what I was going to say.
You're welcome.
It's actually not that broad, but what I found in this film that was really transformationally amazing was being able to edit the film before finishing principal photography, right? I mean, so like I said, the first pass of this, everything was in the warehouse. And we were watching it and sent it to the choreographer. We're like, this is not working yet. And so we need another element. Like we need to go outside. And so having that opportunity to kind of really, I don't just mean watching dailies. I mean like cutting scenes together and seeing how things are fitting together. It's not always possible, especially if you're like, you know, location dependent. There's a lot of reasons why you couldn't do that, but try to build that into to a production schedule where you're going to have some time to really evaluate what you have, cut together what you're doing. That then allows you to go back into. We think of it as being this kind of like pre-production, production, post-production, but I think starting to blur when you can blur those lines, it allows for some really interesting opportunities, and so that's. I had the benefit of doing that in this film, and I would try to prioritize that.
And that's something they like do on most feature films.
Right. With short films, we don't have that
Yeah,
opportunity.
we do not.
Yeah. Well,
Especially
even for
for
short films, you got to find some way to make it happen.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And here comes Steven with the outro.
Thank you.
A big round of applause for our filmmakers. Brittany Severance, Herman, Servatius, Sarah Wisner, Sean Temple, Shaun Clarke, Maria Servellón. And put your hands together for our moderator tonight, Sean Burns. Excellent.